Is it due to their aspirational prayers to achieve true perfect awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings that after the Bodhisattva achieves the direct non-conceptual realization of emptiness, she or he arises and engages in the Bodhisattva's deeds such as the 6 perfections, or is having generated a degree of artificial bodhicitta adequate? I'm going to rephrase this a little bit in the translation. Changsum pakpa sadangbo lepsona sadangbo topsona dini nyamshakle langte dini changjusimbe chupa jindugla sopa chupa chegidua 사당부 톱두스
냠샤티는 가르
냠샤레 랑테
냠샤라 랑테
드니 청심기 추파 청주심비 추파 진두글라 소파 라그레 디 냠샤클레 랑와디 디 물람기 톱기 랑기르베야 디
뭐라고 말해 대고만 냠샤라 랑데 제도도 써놓은 거 소자셔보 소바이 고기와 연장 산재주 고만 토발라 이식의 초당 아니 소남 그 초승도 전에 아니 다 냠슬량고와 연장 냠샤게 내가서 동반이를 제지도 냠바샤범만도 아니 지속이 소남 그 초도 명하체 다 진발라서 왕고스 라베기 아니 대 아니 냠샤래 나한테 제도고 내가서 아니 소남 그 초사라들
So no, that's not necessarily the case. It's not necessarily the case that it's due to the special prayers that the bodhisattvas have. Rather, it's just that in their development of the path, when they when they're absorbed in meditative equipoise, on single-pointedly absorbed in emptiness during the meditative state, then they're principally engaged in this practice which produces the causes of the collection of gnosis. So it's when they come out of that into the post-meditative state and when they start to engage in all of the practices of the bodhisattva, such as the 6 perfections and so forth. And those practices in that kind of post-meditative period are the principal cause of the collection of merit. Dini Changsim Zambo yuna Changsim Zambo Le Dangbo Re Ju Chani or Di Kasa Changsim Zambo yuna Le Dangbo Le Dangbo Denzola Changsim ki chupa Jindukla sopa
Chindu yoare Chiru Nyamle yoare Chiru Nyamle Chason Cholamla yoare Jolamla yoare Rwa Ta Tonlamne Arimba Shindo Tonlam Genega Jimba Nyamle Kenya Jimba Nyamle Chepaba Sanyiwa Chudung Nyamle Chepaba Sa Sumba Sebe Nyamle Chepaba Ta Dinma Sa Sosola Chindu Nyamle Chepad Pat Rugo Armando Ani Chindu Nyamle Cholamne yoare
Cholamle yoare Le Dangbo
Le Dangbo so Sojo Nyo de Le Dangbo was
저저 아니 딩엘이야 디 카상 강기 청춘 참보아
잔수 잠보았어요 요 말에 자세 내 담보면도
어
무슨 잠보았을까
나
무슨 잠보아
문심 참보아
무슨 잠보았어요 뭐 장심 잠보스가 말에 무슨 잠보아
문배신 참보아 디 조금
무슨 잠보아 저 처럼 토야 말은 안 졸아 요라인 봐 무슨 잠보아 등안 졸아
이 나초 딘데 카사 진두기 카사 파친두기 자와치두기는 자와테 치두기를 배해서
무슨 잠보아 디 심비고네 아니 진비 냠래 차에나 친구가 냠래다 조금 말에 대다 초중者판연이 와르다 좋아
한유유라 이디
판연이 와르만도 친구가 잡아랑 아니 찬죽세모에 내겠음 가지고
So now the second half of this question is having generated a degree of artificial bodhicitta. This is what we discussed earlier, and I was searching for the correct translation or a translation of a special term, which applies even to road to beginners, people who have just developed some interest in Mahayana and have decided that they would like to develop bodhicitta. So we produce what is called kind of approximate bodhicitta. It's not actual bodhicitta in the way that a bodhisattva has it, in the sense that like a bodhisattva who has entered the path of accumulation, they have to enter the path of accumulation, the first of the 5 paths of the Mahayana. You have to have produced this non-artificial, spontaneous bodhicitta. But for beginners, that are just becoming involved in this, and they've developed some admiration for the bodhisattva path, and then they produce through effort something that's called proximate bodhicitta, which is a kind of approximation of the actual bodhicitta. Then if you have that kind of motivation, and then you do something, any kind of activity, which is like generosity or practice of ethical conduct and so forth, then that is something that is going to serve as kind of the basic developmental stage, or a kind of practice that will eventually flow into the real practice of the Bodhisattva's 6 perfections, the actual with actual bodhicitta. But you wouldn't call these initial beginning kind of practices the actual practice of the 6 perfections. They don't meet the criteria or the definition of the actual practice of the 6 perfections. What does it matter how extensive the reasoning is that is used to develop the direct realization of emptiness? Isn't the direct realization of emptiness the same experience for a Hinayanist and a Mahayanist? Today, takpa mempa dang, takpa chimbo munsundu tope, toni munsundu tope lo kepar Europeesa.
그요 말이지. 이면 파바라야.
택면 파바.
또는 무슨 또방 야바디고 다디 두고 다시 가산 줄.
그래. 이는 디 채상 디 릭비 남당 타입이
거. 남당 타입이 거는 또바디와 말이지.
그래. 이는 디 카이나사. 이는 카이나. 디 균생 카레사. 카레 디 택바 첨보 디 가사 텍스 장선 박바 디 릭비 남당 타입이 거네.
또 여자.
된을 바꾸러 배 디.
여자. 얘랑 매바 카레스. 그래. 다 디고랑 암비 차바 암보노도 그 차바 치고 와레스. 얘랑 그 돈이지 또 소나. 동반이 리베 땡라 보여 돈이지 또 소나. 아니 고랑 암보도 인장 대담지 침니. 아니 리바 만보 삼니 동반이 땡라 체망내와 진예차라 인장 아니 대담지 침니. 아니 리베 남나시야. 아니 삼미도와 믿음바. 그러마 찬주sem바 암보노보 인장 아니 가소래 리바 찍을 때네 아니 동반이 된 체면내와 내장 아니 대담지 맞음바 리바 마뭐 쌈니 아니 리비 타고 rugo 쳐야돼 아니 동반이 땡라 배와돼 데이디래.
So the reason there's this difference is that first there's no difference at all in the actual direct realization of emptiness in terms of the emptiness as such, as object, and the cognition that is direct perception of emptiness in terms of differentiating the Hinayana and the Mahayana. On that criterion alone, that is, an Arya, someone who has a direct realization of emptiness, whether one is following the Hinayana approach or the Mahayana approach, they realize they have this same kind of realization of emptiness to the extent that it's a direct, non-conceptual realization of emptiness. However, the Hinayana practitioner is not, there's a difference in terms of the intellectual capacity of the two kinds of practitioners. The Hinayanist has a weaker intellectual capacity, and therefore they're satisfied with just a basic once they have developed a valid cognition of emptiness. That is, through reasoning, they developed an understanding of emptiness through logic, through the application of reasoning. And once they've developed that through a limited amount of reasoning, then they're satisfied with that. They use that valid cognition of emptiness, conceptual valid cognition of emptiness, as the foundation for their development of the non-conceptual perception of emptiness. And then they realize emptiness in that process. Now, the Mahayana practitioner, Bodhisattva, is someone who has sharper intelligence. Their intellectual faculties are more powerful, and therefore they're not satisfied with simply a limited amount of reasoning to establish emptiness through valid cognition. Rather, they desire and they employ reasonings, numberless forms of reasoning which apply the analysis that establishes emptiness to basically the limitless numbers of different phenomena. And so therefore, there's that kind of differentiation between the two.
Oh, yeah.
What is the distinction between gross and subtle minds? From the first moment of direct perception, does subsequent instance of gnosis remove karma and mental afflictions from a mental continuum, or does it rid grosser minds until only a most subtle one that is completely free of karma and afflictions? Tony ngusum to peloti sim rakpa tang ya sim rakpa ya sim shintu drawa sim tang rakpe sim kepa di orabe. Di sim rakpa tang sim shintu drawa sim.
Tony dobis to ngusum dobis.
Ngusum dobis.
Tadi 바로 침비 로라 Tony ngusum dobis lola 차라요 말이. 시와 지당 ngadan dena 아니 Tony ngusum 도 차라요 아래. 시와 nga가 진짜 막 파진들을 안 하고 이시 이지시와 Tony ngusum 도 이시 마도 딜라 차라셔요 말이.
So in the perfection system, there's no differentiation between gross and subtle levels of mind with respect to the gnosis that realizes emptiness. That kind of differentiation into like a gross or a grosser form of mind, and as opposed to the extremely subtle forms of mind, with respect to gnosis, this only pertains to the mantra system, not to the perfection system. So within the
아니 돈이 무슨 또 별로 잘하셔요. 그래서.
So in the Vajrayana, then, if we subdivide the Mahayana into the perfection system and the mantra system, the Vajrayana is another name for the mantra system. And so within the mantra Vajrayana approach, and especially within the unexcelled yoga tantra of Vajrayana, then there's that kind of differentiation between relatively gross and extremely subtle forms of mind with respect to gnosis that realizes emptiness. But this does not, this sort of differentiation does not apply to the perfection system.
Oh, yeah. 다다지 오야 가소래 타도 뒤바지도 세 소야제 제가라 아니 가소래 세바세야디 아니 라신지 세바당 라신지 제와 세바당 아니 라신지 제와 세바 전주도 마도와 도지 된 마도바 공도 샤바가 도지 된 마도바 저 마도나 당념지 샤바니지 다 송아 차대스이가라 당념 샤고래 세다다 당념지니 데메주 나외 대주 개면주 세가나 언니 텐다위 된다데 마세나 아니 라신지 제와면 봐 메세나 태좀 메사와 아니 당념지잖아. 아니 가서라 라시지 자매 바로 꾸와 마다파 태손 미사와. 당념지잖아. 아니 디바르 주고 말해. 디바 menjula. 잘못한바니라 당방 티바침보라 당나. 아니 당배 디줄 개면줄 세가나. 아니 당배 아니 디바 주지. 남이지대고 동안진 바인사 동아진바에 디바르 추지 아니 가와르 주위체
So then this discussion is continuing with the issue of this termination. The term termination which appears in the Hinayana scriptures is properly to be understood in some contexts as referring to the non-arising and non-arising, and both of these are understood in the sense of things are extinguished or terminated of intrinsic nature. That is, they don't possess any kind of intrinsic nature at all. And then likewise, the same thing applies to non-arising, that this non-arising is the absence of intrinsic existence. Things do not arise. They're unoriginated because they're devoid of any kind of intrinsic nature. So these two actually come to the same point. They have the same meaning or intention in this context. And therefore, and then likewise with respect to the understanding of whether or not there are three final vehicles or only one final vehicle, a person should understand that. And if one is not able to understand this, one should set it aside. One should remain have equanimity with respect to these differences that one doesn't understand. And in that way protect oneself specifically from developing any kind of hatred or animosity towards the Mahayana. And then this is explained further in the next verses as well. So here this says, by being equanimous, by being indifferent, you do nothing wrong, but negativity comes from anger. How could virtue? Hence, those who seek what is good for themselves should not hate the Mahayana. It says despise, but hate is okay too. No, so therefore, it's that because it's the case that we can protect ourselves by remaining just setting things aside if we don't understand them, it's definitely the case, without question, that kind of basically indifference towards things we don't understand does not produce sin. It doesn't cause us to engage in negative activities, and especially the extremely heinous negative action or sin of despising and condemning the Mahayana and emptiness. So therefore, whereas on the other hand, hatred towards the emptiness or towards the Mahayana is a extremely heavy sin, and it in no way could be construed as being something that is virtuous.
대외티진 세당과 달래 대배 참 미리 오다 권도 티진라 아니 당와에 아니 득발 규칙 그와 미주배 군전 대회 아니 티바 침보다 세당와 다 레스 대바면 다 대화를 대배 차와 미리배 단년디라 아니 사바샤고 그래
So then the last part of this verse says, therefore, anger towards the Mahayana is improper for someone who desires good well-being for themselves. And the commentary explains this further. Because of the reasons given above, this subject of anger towards or hatred towards the Mahayana is something extremely profound, dangerous thing that one should be extremely cautious about. Because those who wish to desire good for themselves, that wish themselves well, is definitely incorrect for such persons to engage in this kind of hatred towards the Mahayana.
Oh yeah, that is la sumba teaching timeji denele sheba tiba chibe lam zoba minba, right? Da dongba ni zam jejiang tiba chibe lam zoba am minba tela sum chibe nane 년도지 denele 자주 chibe sheba zoba ma sumba dang 아니 대시다 초대 양소 나바 산자 미주바 개와 태전이 되는 가 송르바다 숨 예배는 다 담보돼 있다. 년도지 되네라 자주셔be 잡아 마숨바.
Then next comes an explanation of how it is that in the explanations that one finds in the scriptural collections of the Hinayana, one doesn't find the complete explanation or the path and the result of the Mahayana in its entirety. This has multiple subdivisions. The first one of those is that that in the scriptural collections of the Shravakas, that one doesn't that the complete practices of the bodhisattvas were not taught in those scriptures.
다 담 년도지 되네라 자주셔be 잡아 마숨바니 있어. 마숨바 아니 태전이 되네. 다 마숨바 이자 티바 집에 되는 많이 봤은 거 아래. 와 년도 티바 될라니 년도지 티비 되네 될라니. 서로 년도지 티바 티비 티면지 되네 될라니. 와 찬주선배 멀람당 안에 찬주선배 멀람당 안에 계사 조장도 나는 뭐야 다바 조배 찬주도 안에 토바를 집이 주는 거 와기 오라고 치당 아니 니지 첨보라 쏘와 찬주선배 멀람다 줘봐 세대 아니 니지 첨보당 아니 집이 된 셈제당 아니 사당 아니 진발라 쏘여 파지지 줘봐 아니 소남당 수구단 추구주지 그 소남당 이식의 소라고체 다 대단 맞대마 장섬 장섬기 투매도 중화 소재단 예랑 게 삼지 매잡이 티바침비 되는 삼지 매잡이 티바침비 되는 송장 소재 예랑기 또 미니바당 장섬 소재기에 지다와치도 또 미니바기 되네라 송장 티바매비 되네라 대다 겨울 마셔버리 쪄봐 영어 마셔야 돼.
So this is explained in verse 90, where it says that the Bodhisattva's aspirational prayers are not taught in the listener's or Shravaka vehicle, nor are their practices, nor the dedication of merit. The first 3 lines then of this verse 90. And so in the scriptural collections of the Hinayana, which teach the vehicle of the Shravakas, in those scriptural collections, the aspirational prayers of the Bodhisattva, as well as the extraordinary dedication, which has sort of a magnificent dedications that are performed by the Bodhisattvas. So the prayers themselves include such as the aspiration, thinking that may I and all other sentient beings achieve unexcelled, true, perfect awakening. That kind of prayer. And then the dedication would be likewise dedicating any kind of activity that one is engaged in for oneself, achieving the unexcelled, true, perfect awakening for the sake of all sentient beings, that kind of magnificent dedication. And then likewise, all of the activities, including the development of great compassion, which wishes to free all sentient beings from their suffering, the development of bodhicitta, the aspiration to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, etc. All of the other practices of the 6 perfections, including generosity and so forth. And then likewise, the stages of the bodhisattva path, the first stage, etc. And then all of the other activities of the perfections, generosity and so forth. Likewise, the magnificent 2 collections. These are the collection of merit, which serves as the primary or principal cause for the production, for the actualization of the physical embodiments of Buddhahood, and then likewise the collection of gnosis, which serves as the principal cause for the actualization of the Dharmakaya. And likewise, the marvelous, incredible powers of the bodhisattvas. All of these things are taught in an inconceivable fashion, in a way which ordinary beings and Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas cannot even conceive of this in the scriptural collections of the Mahayana. And these sorts of things that have been just mentioned are such as the practices, the dedication, and so forth. These things are not extensively explained in the scriptural collections of the Hinayana.
Oh yeah, Chumba Yongo Mashade. That Chanju Samba Kala Churu Segana. Tibachibi Denela. Ani Chumba Yongo Javar Mashabe. Kase, Timeji Denela Javar. Tibachibi Denela Songjang. Timeji Denela Chumba Yongo Javar Mashabe. Mashabe. Timeji Denene Shabang Yavare. Javar Mashade Shabang Ede. Ani Tedam. 냠 코나냠 대담시 냠서 랑베 가와 참여심도 초 숨나 창자외 남 잡아권베 자주사바 갈라주르세요. 공도 시야바기 대다 공바짬지 아니 가와 참여심도 소스 가와 참여심도 창자외 남 잡아를 공베 자주사바 갈라주대. 자주선비 남 마자미 치로 마자미 치로 스체 티바체베 되니라 티바송게 남이 셰바 지지를 티제지 마자셔나 다 티바체베.
So then the last line then says, since those things are not explained, all of the things that have been listed, the bodhisattvas' prayers, their activities, their dedications, these are not explained extensively in the scriptures that pertain to the Shravakayana, the vehicle of the Shravakas. Since that's the case, then how could one achieve the status of a bodhisattva based upon that those limited expositions of these topics that one does find in the scriptural collections of the Shravakayana. Now, it is definitely the case that these things are taught in the scriptural collections of the Hinayana. That is the case. However, they're not taught in very extensively, and because they're not taught extensively, that if one was to attempt to practice them only based upon the explanations that one finds in the Hinayana scriptures, one would not be able to engage. One would not be able to become a bodhisattva who conditions themselves and practices and develops themselves over the course of 3 countless eons, so as to complete the path to awakening. It's impossible that one would be able to do that bodhisattva practice for 3 countless eons. Therefore, based upon that, or rather that those Hinayana scriptural collections do not present the complete exposition of the Mahayana path.
Oh yeah, that 가서래 티바멤비 되네라 티바치베 람 조바 산제 지 마셔바데 마셔데 년주지 남라 러시 마덴 비처를 세더라 아니데 마덴 비처를 티바멤비 멤비 되네라 티바치베 람 조바 산제 지 마셔 년주 남라 러시 마덴 비처를 세더다 가르래서나 티멘지 되네라 티바 첨보다 투모위 남 땡장 티바 티지 투모 많이 받기 남대다 아니 티면제 마셔봐 와 년주지 마담바래 마담바
So then someone might come back and say, well, if the 3 vehicles, since there are explanations of the paths that are followed by all the followers of all 3 vehicles in the scriptural collections of the Hinayana, since one does find explanations of the paths of all 3 of those kinds of vehicles, why is it then that you are saying that the Mahayana is not completely taught within the Hinayana scriptural collections?
현재 공도 시작하기 아니 자주 선비 줘봐 몰람당 아니 친루당 인제 전보다 손이 나오셔라 소와 대다 마셔봐 잠지 야 티바치비 되는 마인바가 먼저 와 대다 마셔봐당 다니 다 돈이 르베 남람을 타해보고는 땡라 마밤나 아니 가서래 아니 티바치비 되는 마인바줘에 자와시럽다 보기 아니 단다지 공도 시작하게 현지세배 몰람당 인제당 진발라서와 자체배 남지를 받대다 마된장 티바신비 되네 이용거와디 규제 가르래에서나 돈이 리베 남랑 타해벽고나 땡라 봐봐 연장 어디 순거래 하고서
택범memb에 되는
공도 시작에 자체배 남지를 봐 그러봐 인제당 지소 파진 줘봐다 손이나 써와게 자치베 남지 림바테다 마덴 바tam지 티바치베 되는 많이 밤무죠 사실 되게 공도샤바게 자치베 남지 림바테다 마장장 돈이 리빈 남랑 타야베고네 땡라 파바 인상 티바치베 되네래
So here then, the person who's asking this question is saying, now it is the case that there's some exposition of the Mahayana practices. There's mention of the bodhisattva path to achieve Buddhahood, and there's a discussion of some of the bodhisattva's practices and the achievement of Buddhahood by means of the path followed by the bodhisattva, the third vehicle among the 3 vehicles. So then why isn't that these scriptural collections of the Hinayana schools that teach these things, why aren't they adequate to present the Mahayana? The reason that is not the case is because although it is true that these Hinayana scriptural collections do present a certain basic portion or the basic outline of the Mahayana path in a limited way, they do so only in a very partial and limited fashion, such that it's not based upon that limited presentation alone. It's impossible that one would be able to practice the Bodhisattva path to the full extent and actualize unexcelled true perfect awakening of Buddhahood based on that exposition. Now, the reason that is the case is that if we compare those sorts of presentations with what one finds in the Mahayana scriptural collections, one finds the incredibly vast practices of the Bodhisattva. So on the practice side, in terms of the vast, extensive path, method side of the path, one finds all of the Bodhisattva practices presented in extensive detail, and including the aspirational prayers, bodhicitta, the dedications, and so forth. And then likewise the description of the fruit of the path, the two kayas, or the two forms, embodiments of Buddhahood, the physical embodiment and the Dharmakaya are explained. And then likewise, this is also explained in the basic wisdom, where it states that here in the Mahayana presentation of emptiness, one has to say, although it is the case that emptiness is explained in the scriptural collections followed by the Shravaka Yana, that is, that are held by the Hinayana tradition, it's only a brief exposition of emptiness, and it's nothing like the limitless forms of reasoning that establish emptiness to the fullest extent that you find in the scriptural collections of the Mahayana.
Oh yeah, 아니 티바체보단 투모위 남지를 받아 땡장 사와자 자체위 남지를 받아 아니 돈바니 리베 남다나 타에베고네 마täm바 인장 아니 티바치베 남지 체니 마상와 그러 마상 티제 마상 세다 들리 말이.
So therefore these scriptural collections don't provide the total and definitive or definitional version of the Mahayana. They present a kind of a portion of the Mahayana or portions of the path which are held in that are common to the Mahayana, but they do not present the Mahayana as such in the full and definitive fashion that one finds it in the scriptural collections of the Mahayana.
Oh yeah, that's 창주선배 창주지 진럽산제 마셰 산제지 마셰 된딜라니 자와레 합에 참아수 현수여 세 태양 창주선배 아니 라나메베 창주지 치도 아니 다 초사바라 소와 신지라와 임비체 초사바데 아니 초소 괴데 된딜라 아니 자와레 합에 참아수시여 좀 된대지 아니 숨반 참아 현수에 매배 아니 특정 그때는 빵을 매셔고 서 특정 그때는 빵을 매셔고.
So the next verse continues to explain this. I've got a slightly different translation. It has the same general meaning, but this is the way I'm translating this, verse 91. The Buddhas did not explain the empowerment for the Bodhisattva's awakening, and who else is a superior authority on this matter? And so the explanation of this in the commentary is that, moreover, in order to achieve, for the sake of the unexcelled awakening of a bodhisattva, there is the empowerment. Here, empowerment is referring to the accumulation of the collections, the accumulation of the two collections, and who, other than the victor, that is the victorious Buddha, is a superior authority on this topic. Because there is no superior authority on this matter, then it's inappropriate. One should not abandon or cast aside the scriptural collections of the Mahayana.
Oh yeah, that didn't. 电视上春天在娘说来把三件米珠把，那看就被人别往着切呗，安尼都给你的，都按点把的，估计点把，看到别人别往着切呗，光那么你的切的，安尼电视呢，娘说来的，安尼我看说的，等你看提前了，吃了怕比点点汤，谁的不着，吃了怕比点点汤，是。파비 덴바시 친지라와 안에 좀 된데 그 안에 람 저비를 받 땜바더라 지나 파비 된다 촌디 좀세 장주 초디 땜바이 세르가나 안에 장주 초디 세르가나 년도 그람 냠소 렘바더라 안에 장주 소디 와오 천반년 샤시 양다 봉와시 주주지 강바시 안봉아 동아 안에 자주 연라 된 파람 연라 제 제니가라 자주 소든 보대 대 소든 보점 아와 참여선도 관배장 안에 상자 터버 주고 말에 세대라 장주 선비 장주 지 진럽 상제지 말에 대저와 로마들과 진럽 파배 된된당 장주 초된 담바이 람니년데 투모레 산제저부 강글랍서 된저와데 장주소대당 코와 주도 그人把 光别的 년제도 투모위 람지레 마도 아니 산제 그 저부 주지 람이 말에 대담지 산제 그 저부 톱톱 말에 세들라 다디 저와등에 저와도 로마선데 티반 멤버 자존발에 산제지 저부 강글하데 산제지 저부 사바 말에 산제지 송기 친랍 강기 세가 산제게 송마 송젠된 그 천주기 년된 자존비 저우 톱 뉴응게데 파베 담바시 코와 주변에 봐도 도비시 안 담바시 메다서 주주 다 대시랑아랑 그 천체기 동아 담바 천체 메다 동아 동다미시 야 안에 윤윤이 두다.
So then is explain. Next comes the explanation that one is not able to achieve Buddhahood by taking up in practice merely the four noble truths and the portions of the path. That is the portions of the factors that are conducive to awakening, which are found within the Shravaka tradition. That is, these factors that pertain to awakening are a version of them is found in the Shravaka tradition as well, and actually throughout the Hinayana path. One has to practice the 37 factors which pertain to awakening. However, the way it's done within the Hinayana tradition is only a partial sort of facsimile of the way in which these same 37 factors are employed in the course of the Bodhisattva path so as to achieve awakening. And therefore, because the kind of exposition that one finds of these things, the four Arya realities or the Four Noble Truths, as well as the 37 factors pertaining to awakening, because these are only presented in a partial way within the Hinayana tradition, therefore it's impossible to achieve Buddhahood by means of that kind of exposition of them. And then this is presented also in verse 92, where it says, the path that is shared with the Shravakas, I'm translating Shravaka, or I'm just using Sanskrit Shravaka instead of listener that's used here. The path that is shared with the Shravakas includes the empowerment, and I'm using the word empowerment instead of blessings for this word here, include the empowerment for the Arhat, the meaning of the Arya's truths. That's the Four Noble Truths, or the four realities or truths for Aryas, and the factors of awakening. If Buddhahood were the result of that path, how could Buddhahood be superior to Arhatship? So that's the verse. Now, in terms of these 37 factors that pertain to awakening, they're given in the scriptural collections of the Hinayana tradition as well, and the names are basically the same. That is, there are 4 applications of mindfulness, there are 4 correct exertions, 4 bases of supernatural power, 5 faculties, 5 powers, 7 factors of awakening, and then the 8-part Arya path. So all of these collective, if you add them all up, they come up to 37. And so collectively this group is referred to as the 37 factors that pertain to awakening. These exist within the Hinayana path, but because they're not complete, therefore it's impossible that one can achieve Buddhahood by means of them. So the commentary on this begins by saying that what is it that makes the result of Buddhahood superior to that of the Arhatship, which is achieved through the Hinayana, the lesser vehicle? What is it that makes that superior?
Oh yeah. 他把明白，三界送给起了看给些三界级，俺送简简级，俺起了看给，年的这准备走托女比，俺怕别点把系统，没大说居住当，他点把西部热了，俺切去热细切一个了，是吧？俺没大东啊大没事，有工作见热去。 과바 시와 차놈 해중 람리바 주방 내신 시체니 다 저래 수고만 하다 오 메타서 주루당 장주지 초디 소든 뭐 잠시 세가라 안에 참바니야 샤시 야다 봉와시 주루지 강바시 암봉아 또몽아 장주지 야라든 파바야라 게 사대 단 런지 년도 그 장주 토바라 쳐바게 남지 쪼어디 大国买定吧的，是吧？因此，提前了有这几天，宁波咱们是广巴单2把1，咱们年度当长期3把你个涂抹完的，就涂抹完了之后，涂抹明白，就涂抹完，按你长期说涂抹明就电视当长期说的广巴咱们啦，按你这部三节就广巴涂抹没人把的，就没事吧的，涂抹没，呀。
So then, here then, if one poses the question of, is there nothing that makes the result of Buddhahood superior to that of the Arhat that is achieved, or the Arhat that has achieved that result through the practice of the Hinayana? If that was the case, if there was nothing that made the Buddhahood, the result of which is being a Buddha, superior to that of an Arhat, Hinayana Arhat, then it would be the case that there would be nothing superior at all about being a Buddha. And so the explanation of this is that now the empowerment, the empowering speech of a Buddha. Here, this is referring to the Buddhas, like Buddha Bhagavan, like our Buddha Shakyamuni, where he teaches the extensive the path. When he teaches a Buddha like that teaches the path, then the Shravaka sort of practitioner is able to achieve the result of arhatship following the Shravaka path. Now, this Shravaka path is, as mentioned, is principally the meaning of the four Arya realities, or the Four Noble Truths, which refers to the truth or reality of suffering, the truth of origination, the truth of the path, and then the truth of cessation, and then the truth of the path. Each of these four truths or realities is subdivided into four aspects, so making a total of 16 aspects of the four truths. Beginning with impermanence and so forth. There are four for each of these. We won't go through listing all of them. And then likewise, so that exposition of the Four Noble Truths, or the four realities for Aryas, is given in the Shravaka vehicle, and one can achieve through the practice of the path that teaches that. And then likewise in the Shravaka vehicle, there's the 37 factors on the side of pertaining to awakening. As we mentioned above, there's the four applications of mindfulness, the four correct exertions, the four bases of supernormal power, 5 faculties, 5 powers, 7 factors of awakening, and then the 8-part Arya path. These are all taught in the Hinayana scriptures, and through the practice of them, one can actualize the result of being a arhat, of the Hinayana type of arhat. However, this is simply the path or presentation of the path, which is common with the Shravaka tradition. That is, it does not include the vast explanation of these topics that one finds within the Bodhisattva vehicle, or the Mahayana path. And since it's the case that it's merely a sort of common sort of exposition, then that exposition, that empowerment that the Buddha, through the Buddha's speech, the Buddha empowers these persons following the Shravakayana, the vehicle of the Shravakas, to achieve arhatship in that way. But that kind of result it derives from that common exposition, or the basic level of exposition of the path. And from that, how would it be possible that the extraordinary or uncommon result, that is Buddhahood, would be able to arise from that common, limited sort of exposition of the path that one finds there? It's impossible for such an uncommon result to arise from a common cause.
Oh, yeah. That in it, Dijela, Keve teaching you to ne Garsong Rubatella. Chanju Jela, Nevi, Dodela, Gamaza, Segala, Chanju Semberg, Annie Sawadan, Jajevi, Annie Joban Zoba, Sawa, Annie Samatomba, Annie Katajun Kodshaba, Nashin, Chani, Ribinamra Tai, Guana. Annie Jasaji Joba Jajevi, Lamji, Annie. 오른바테다 송고래 장주 쪄봐 장주 쪄라 내위 된 제사 장주 수비 쪄봐라 좁아 내위 된데 아니 티메토모 마이베 돈이 연대지 돌아 까마자 장주 쪄라 내위 저 도절라네 까마자 아니 티바치라 까자베 세가나 아니 티바치라 까자와 디치리 제사그 아니 가서 잔주십에 쪄반 줘봐 티바십에 되네라 까자와 윤전 디실 아니 캐완 남지 티쟁이 되네 까 송고래 써야 돼 캐완 대지 캐완 남지 7 캐완 남지 송 윤전 디실 캐완 남지 티쟁이 되네 까 아니 송알 차워 야나 송시바오 전에 가나다 가서 구지저이 말해
So therefore, because that is the case, it is appropriate for an intelligent person to accept, to hold that the scriptural collection of the Mahayana is the speech of the Buddha. And the next verse explains that the subject, the established meaning of the bodhisattva practices were not taught in the scriptural collections of the Hinayana tradition, the Shravaka schools. However, they were, and because they were taught, they were spoken. The word here actually means spoken, and it's referring to the speech of the Buddha in the Mahayana. Therefore, intelligent persons ought to preserve them or hold them as such. And then the commentary explains that the meaning of the topics, which are the totality of the practices of the bodhisattva. So, meaning of the topics, which are well established as the totality of the practice of the bodhisattva. This refers here to the profound aspect of the Mahayana path, which is the teaching of emptiness and the realization of emptiness. By means of the numberless kinds of reasoning that one finds in the Mahayana scriptures. And then the other part of that is the vast deeds of the bodhisattva. As mentioned previously, the practice of the perfections motivated by bodhicitta and so forth. So this meaning is not, or the Lord Buddha did not speak of these topics in the sutras of the Shravaka tradition, the sutras held by the Shravaka schools. And on the other hand, they were spoken by him within the scriptural collections of the Mahayana. Therefore, those who are intelligent, who are discerning, that is, have the capacity to understand this, should hold the scriptural collections of the Mahayana as the speech of the Buddha. Now, in the verse here, it says they ought to hold the scriptural collection of the Mahayana as the speech of the Buddha, but one can also read this verb as an imperative form, meaning hold these as the speech of the Buddha.
Oh yeah. 나 전에 대제라 다 티바 숨 거와 년제지 티바 란자지 티바 특제지 티바 숨 거위 거와데 가르래잖아 다 누제 찌위를 받아 튀바 토마니 아니 두자라 가서를 두자 남 초텔을 찌미도 봐 현장 그러와 가서는 저기 또 가르가래 또 거와래 지단 멤버 멤버라 지단 네배 네발라 대신 멤버 멤버라 대신 산제 두자라 지점체도 최대도 사실 와라 어때 나시 전에 산제 그 아니 누자 지위人把个干啦누자 랑랑 그 감다 매와다 삼바 띵고와 인장 아니 년되지 특바송사기 누자 랑자지 특바송사 아니 자태전지 특바송자 특바숨 거와 기다리 림바신도 두제티 림바테 송고아래.
So therefore, it's the way this works. That is, why was it necessary for Lord Buddha to teach three vehicles? The reason that it was necessary is because of the different stages in leading those who are to be trained. This is expressed in the sutra as well. There's a sutra which says, just as a doctor provides medicine to sick persons in accordance with their sickness, so the Buddha teaches the Dharma in accordance with the interests, the sort of dispositions, the different characters of the persons to be trained. So the analogy there is that the doctor doesn't just give the same medicine to all the patients, rather prescribes and gives the kind of medicine that's appropriate to the specific sick person, and the Buddha does the same thing.
Oh yeah, that dear country sana duja trimi rimba 나래와다 치다보 이게 침모 로주다 대신 산제 두자라 지점세비 최대한도세 아니 나줘봐 다기 아니 이게 로디 나줘 그 중대다마 로 아니 로데 지디간라 로데 담바 토마 아니 이게 로고와 인자 이게 침모 로도 주바 나신 대신도야 산제 남지 아니 두자라 아니 최대한바 지네 토마님 토마니네 아니 또 가와다 그 최대 믿음바 아니 두자 코랑기 유 로제다 참바게 아니 최지된바 와 로제다 제 최된바 인자 나래와다 치다보 이게 침모 로주자 디시산제 두자라 치점세비 최된도 어디
So then this is explained exactly the same way here in the verse that we're at, verse 94. This says, I've changed a few of the words in this, a language instructor will make some students read a diagram, recite a diagram of the alphabet. Likewise, the Buddha taught the Dharma in accord with his disciples' ability to tolerate it. So just as a language instructor at the very beginning has his or her students study the alphabet by means of a diagram which presents the letters of the alphabet. That's the beginning portion of learning a language. And similar to that, the Buddhas, at the very beginning, for the sake of the disciples, the persons to be trained, do not teach an extremely difficult some dharma which is extremely difficult to understand. Rather, they teach the Dharma to the extent that their minds, that it will be something that their minds will be able to tolerate. Their minds will be able to comprehend the subject matter that's being taught.
Oh yeah, that is what conditions na. 가지란이 디발레 넘버 도치 최단도 세가나 아니 누자 가시라 아니 가서래 란자 뒤에 자유게 다 마다나 아니 레소법이 가사 아니 가서래 매봤다 와라 소와 아니 렌데로 꾸어 대와라 소와 용구요와 인장 텐더비 아니 렌데로 꾸었다 와 용구 텐더비 아니 대다 꾸안다 비치도 아니 누자 가시라 란자 뒤에 자유게 다 여봤어요 그러나 다단 다음에 봐 내가 이기나네 아마 초도 숨바 신호 세가라 텐더비 란자 뒤에 자유게 다 마데나 안 레서버 가사야 맨디 아니 렌데로 꾸었다베 가사 뒤오라 다음에 때마다 나도 주어 때마 이기나네 나도 때마 주어지 초인바 인장 나도 주어 때
So then the explanation of this process is as follows. In the first part of the next verse 95 says, for some, in order to turn them away from sin or from negative actions, he teaches the Dharma. Now, this Dharma here can actually be understood in the sense of teaching them the existence of a self, which is a self-sufficient substance. This is explained that, or it is explained that in the case of some people who are exceedingly habituated to the notion of a self, if you taught them selflessness right away, they would come to think that this teaching of selflessness means the total non-existence of a self, such that it, meaning that there would be no agent who would be engaged in actions, no agent that would experience the results of actions. They would fall into a nihilistic view as a result of that. And therefore, it is said that between the two teachings, the teaching of a self and the teaching of selflessness, in that context, the teaching of a self is actually superior. So in that kind of context, Lord Buddha himself taught the existence of a self.
Yoba. 다 여봐 땡.
So he taught a self which exists as a self-sufficient substance in that context for people who, if they heard the teaching of selflessness, would fall into a nihilistic interpretation of it and would become such that they wouldn't be able to follow karma and its results.
되니 카질라니 디발레 남반 도지를 세타든지 된다와데라 아니 소져발라 소와 남반 도비 아니 미게 주본 그 추줌당 아니 군조숨라 자수주비 잠조당 아니 레단 제비 남샤 땜베 아니 주 충의 삼바젠 저 카질라 아니 추줌송말라 땜네 아니 제불 하며 공반 두바 차비 치도 차비치 제부 충 삼바 제부 충우다 두모 남지다 버렸대.
So then this first line then says, for some, in order to turn them away from sin or extreme negative actions, he teaches the Dharma. So this teaching of the self could be appropriate in this context. And then in addition to that, for some, in order to cause them to abandon or turn away from heavy sinful actions like taking life and so forth, killing, he teaches the Dharma. That would refer then especially to the practices of the abandonment of the 10 non-virtuous kinds of actions, the practice of going for refuge, and these kinds of practices which enable the person to avoid falling into a lower state of existence and instead enable them to progress so that they achieve a high status kind of life in the next life.
아니 가서래 카질라니 니덴바 세디 두자 쭈증게 삼바장 가시라 안에 다 가서 코와타다 동아지 라신도 통네 텔라 타바기 안에 타바튼도 녀게 저와 된데라 안에 다 된다와데 좀 된데 이 콜로를 봐 숨은 거 외에는 콜로 담비 치도 제 두자 연시 전국 치도 제 두자 될라 아니 순진 자타데 치료 텐도 주바 땜바 카질라니 순진 자타데 대전이라 땜바 땜라 세가라 가사근다 매장 순진 자타데도 주비 치료 여바 치된 여바 땜바
I made a mistake in the translation there. Actually, it should be, so this first line saying that for some, in order to turn away from suffering, from sin, he teaches the Dharma. That refers to the teaching of the Dharma to avoid non-virtue, so as to avoid the heavy negative actions of taking life and so forth. And so then for these kinds of disciples as well, in some of those types of disciples that have an attitude which is similar to that, or that accords with the person of lesser scope, then he teaches also the methods of achieving the high status form of life of a god or a human, which is the result of virtue. And then the second type of person here comes in the third line, which says that for some, he teaches how to accomplish merit. That actually refers to here the type of disciple or person to be trained who has the attitude of a person of intermediate scope. For those, he teaches that the entirety of samsara is something to be gotten rid of, and the nirvana is something to be taken up. And then for some others as well, in the final line of this verse, it says he teaches relying upon two. Here, this refers to the teaching of the existence of external objects, which are substantially different from the mind that cognizes them. So here, where it says there's relying upon two, that's referring specifically to the teaching of the existence of external objects, which are a substance, different substance from the mind. That is the perceiver mind and the percept, or the thing which is apprehended by mind, are substantially different things.
Oh yeah, 다디니 카지라니 니 마덴 세디 아니 좀 된데 요 콜로를 봐 숨고 왜나네 콜로 탐이 치도 있어요 두자 아니 샘자 봐 카지라니 아니 수당 수집에 참아 대신지 동화 순전 이동 그 동바 생각이 야 동비 시와 아니 태안단 봐 주바 덴베 카지라 니 미덴 세 순전 대타대 좀 주바 마인 봐 대타대 그 동화 덴바 인장 댄사데 콜로타미 치도 자유 두자 샘자 버튼
Then in the first line of verse 96, he says, for some, he teaches not relying upon two, or not, he teaches a teaching which is based on the absence of duality, another way to gloss that. And then the commentary explains that for some disciples or some persons to be trained, he teaches that the awareness which is devoid of subject and object being different, is ultimately existent or established ultimately. He teaches that, and in that way, for some persons, he teaches this not relying upon or not being based upon two or duality. This duality here is referring again to the idea that the valid cognition and the object of a valid cognition are not two separate substances. They're substantially the same thing. And that absence of duality between the cognizing subject, the mind awareness, which is validly apprehending an object, and then the object which is being validly apprehended, the percept or concept that is being validly apprehended, that they don't have, there's no difference in substance between these two things. Therefore, they're devoid or they're empty of that kind of duality, and that kind of emptiness of that kind of duality is taught, for example, in the Yogacara tradition. That explanation of emptiness is found there.
사모 쿠트 짠지 바 돈이 인지 돈이 인지 님보전 창주 주바 가지 라오 세대기 다 콜로 파바 그 체도 차이 두자 안보랍 아니 우마와 대다라 내루 사모 오 템바 셴바기 아니 가소래 쿠트 짠서나 다 가소래 잼바기 잼바 괜찮아 때네 아니 봐 타지도 아니 가서로 담아 줘봐 땡겐 댐베 또나 아니 내단 대비내서 내 가서 내단 대비 내가 좀 믿어 봐게 아니 집밖에 봐 집밖에 봐게 아니 사모 동반이다 아니 사모 동반이다 아니 인지 님보전 세리가 돈이도 비 이些탑체바 전지 신비 아니 어떤이 제비 돈이도 비 시달라 인지 님보 짠니 라나 메비 창주 주바 안보 잡도 주바 아니 같이라 담바래.
Then for some, that is for those who are the highest form of, have the highest intellect, for these he teaches the achievement of awakening, which has as its essence emptiness and compassion, which is the profound thing that terrifies those who are timid or who are frightened by it. Now here, this term timid or frightened of it refers to someone who holds very strongly to the idea that things are established by means of their own intrinsic nature. And based on reasoning, they cling to this idea that things are established by means of their own intrinsic nature. Therefore, because of that clinging or grasping to this notion of things existing by means of their own intrinsic nature, they're frightened by the teaching of the profound path, which has as its essence emptiness and compassion, and which is the method for the achievement of Buddhahood, of awakening. So here in the commentary on this, it explains that those who are this profound nature of things, or the profound way in which things exist, which is something which generates terror in the minds of timid sorts of people who grasp at or are attached strongly to the idea that things are real. This emptiness, as well as the compassion that goes along with it, is the essence of the practice that enables one to, the method of achieving, or the practice which enables one to achieve unexcelled awakening. And so this is, the Lord Buddha then taught this to some who are of the highest caliber of intellect.
Oh yeah, 근데 인자다 좀 된데 안에 두자는 바 치디 잠바 토마 다음에 때도 매도 미루마 대다라 안에 라자티베 자유가 풍봉하니 쿠르니 쿠제와니 가사인세 다 여바대지 제체 대나 다음에 때문에 내도 롱 체지 다음에 때문에 내도 미루마기 아니 콜로 담비 체도 자유 두자 년된되니 대다라 아니 가사 그 다음에 다음에 지나나 가사 그 다음에 아니 덴바시당 창조소진에서 왔대 체지 다음에 마덴바 로와 체지 다음에 때문에 룸마 인자 체지 다음에 마 내도 미룸마 인자 아니 가사 그 콜로 담비 가서 아니 가사 그 다음에 잠재송
So then, because of this sequence, or this process of leading the disciples, the persons to be trained through the different understandings of things, that is why for some persons of certain capacity, the Lord Buddha actually taught that there is a self. There's a sutra which says that the aggregates are the burden, and there's a person that bears that burden, and this is understood in the sense of being a substantially existing self. For those types of disciples, that was the appropriate teaching in that context. Then for persons who are a little bit more intelligent, the people that can understand things in a more sophisticated fashion, then he taught the kind of understanding of the selflessness of the person that one finds, for example, in the scriptural collections of the Hinayana, in which one finds that there is no such self of persons in the sense of a self which is substantially, which is a self-sufficient substance. So he taught that kind of explanation of selflessness of persons, meaning that the person is empty or devoid of a self, which is a self-sufficient self. That kind of self doesn't exist within the person, and so he taught that kind of teaching for that kind of disciple.
Oh yeah, 아니 수당 순지 참아 제타다도 주바 치료텐도 주바야 이바데 콜로 참았어.
Oh, and then so this is what one finds then in the first wheel of Dharma. That is that kind of explanation of reality, that selflessness of the person in the sense of the person not having a self, which is a self-sufficient substance, as well as in that kind of exposition of selflessness, he also said that there are substantially existent external objects, and then likewise the cognizing subjects or the awarenesses which cognize external objects, etc., are themselves substantially existent. So that is the kind of exposition of reality that you find in the first turning of the wheel of Dharma.
어디니 가지라니 이 마덴세데 아니 콜로 탐미 가서 누자 안보 다 등스나 뭐도 삼삼바 대다라 아니 순진 대세지 동화 가야 돼 도대사 주를 가서 컴스부디다니 삼삼모 셰와당 아니 랑가시비 도이 가서 치료 나와 유메디 류당 용제 내다마 세민 나조 나와나 산잠티니 아마고 시와 나신체니 최탐제 나 셈지 다니 잠도 투와 인지 아니 치료지 아니 수매봐 어디 순지 대상 가야 돼.
So then in the middle turning of the wheel of, in the third turning of the wheel of Dharma, on the other hand, the Buddha taught that this absence of duality in the sense of that cognizing subject, that is a mind or awareness, which is perceiving or cognizing an object, and then the object themselves are not substantially different. That is, the mind, the cognizing subject, the mind, and the objects, the things, for example, physical things and so forth, or visible forms and so forth, these objects are actually of the same substance as the cognizing subject, which is perceiving or conceiving of them. And this is explained in sutras such as the Sandhi Nirmochana Sutra, the unraveling of the intention sutra, in which the Lord Buddha said that these three worlds are mere mind. The three worlds are mere mind. Then likewise in the introduction to Lanka Sutra, the entrance to Lanka Sutra, Lankavatara Sutra, Lord Buddha said that Lanka Shekpe.
치료 나와 유메디 리당 lonje 내자와 세민 나조 나와 나서 치료기 나와 요 말이.
So that all of these things that appear externally, that all of the things that appear externally, the various forms of objects, the world and so forth, are actually just mere appearance. They're simply a mere appearance of mind. They don't exist as objects that are distinct from, are separate from mind. Rather, they're simply an appearance of mind. So in that sense, then, the appearing objects are of the same substance as the cognizing subject here, the mind or awareness, which is perceiving the objects.
Oh, yeah. Denita, Amborabje Tatuba, Anu Kolo Papa, Gendin Disum, Anisera Nimbola, Sawa, Didaka Kapso, Anis Kaso. 예외 내가 라스네 남진 거 봐지 최탐제 알아시지 땅바다 내가 풍봉 알아시지 땅바라 쏘와 아니다 가서래 알아시지 땅바 땅이 된가 봐봐.
Then in the intermediate, the middle turning of the wheel of Dharma, such as which we find in the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, etc., there Lord Buddha taught that everything, that is, in the extended enumeration of everything, he said that from physical things up to and including omniscience, all of these things are empty of intrinsic existence. And similarly, the same thing I find in the short Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, the Heart Sutra. There we find that the five aggregates are empty of intrinsic existence. So this is just an abbreviated way of saying the same thing, that everything from physical objects up to and including the omniscience is empty of intrinsic existence. One finds that in abbreviated forms as well.
Oh, yeah. That didn't that turn to what that teaching got to me. Don't buy you bone, Gaza, Bona. 아니 예와 대다그다 된두되라 아니 대다케베 티젠라 콘로와니 세차지 조비 창조 주제지 하바라도 대바차 다 티젠라 대다케베 아니 최탐제 라신지 동바 댐바기 아니 특바치비 되네라 아니 콘트로와디 세바차신 아니 조비 창조 누버 차비 치도 아니 가서라 탑라나 매바데 사모동바니 돈이도베 셰라당 아니 자주 그 셈이 임베 아니 하바도양 아니라도 대바치고래
So then the next verse is the summation of the refutation of the view that the Mahayana Sutras are not the speech of the Buddha. So this final verse here is the summation of this discussion, which is the refutation of that wrong view. And so here I've come up with a different translation of the verse here. It follows, thus noble persons should extinguish their animosity towards the Mahayana, and in order to accomplish perfect awakening, should have serene faith in it to the highest degree. And this commentary says the same thing. Thus, wise persons or intelligent persons should extinguish their animosity towards the Mahayana. And in order to actualize a complete awakening, in order to accomplish perfect awakening, they should have serene faith in it to the highest degree.
Oh, yeah. Then Tibachella Rabdeji, Tella Shaba Jabai, Lame Chanju Tobji, Dawa Kunja Shala Drup Segala, that Tibachimbu Denela, Rabdo Tabata. And the Tibachimbu Denene Shaba, Nyamsu Lansing, or that Jebi Dan Semjedan, and the Jaba Chindu Paro de Chaba Trula Sawa, Jabai, Paro de Chaba Truki, and the Jabai, or Jabai. 아니 대단해서 나마라 때나 라나메베 자주 타바 조신 지된 비대와 꾸장 아니 샬라 트베 티바지베 되네라 타바양 그와 자신 아니 티바지베 되네 그 된다다 냠스 나와 자고래.
Then verse 98 says, through faith in the Mahayana and by the practices stated therein, one will attain unexcelled awakening and all kinds of joy along the way, or all kinds of happiness along the way. So thus, this exposition of the Mahayana, which contains the full explanation of emptiness as well as all of the Bodhisattva's practices, one should have serene faith in this, the scriptures which explain the Mahayana. And by means of the explanation that one finds in those scriptures, one should take them up into practice. That means developing bodhicitta, engaging in the practice of the 6 perfections and so forth. And then by means of those activities, by means of that practice, this would also this kind of practice, then one will in the future achieve unexcelled awakening. And on the side or along the way, one will also accomplish all forms of worldly happiness, just as a side effect, and therefore one should have even higher respect for the scriptures of the greater vehicle, and one should take up in practice the meaning of those scriptures.
Tini jinda tsujim da subi chuni chabaradu, chimba lasha nyingji yingbo jende dagom zhe sede. Da gyawo deche sambo, gyawo jasi la ne yu kapte. Ani da kasore, jiso chugi nani. Ani chimba la damba dangye, deyade, jiso chesum, teta pamoji, devra shibi, chimba namla nga, chani, uma juba la soa nasi chani. 자세라 내에 갑디 짐바탕 아니 괜히 반자 아니 가서래 nga 방방게 괜히 소지바 마침발렘바 로바엠바 아니 주 창방와기 아니 괜히 기당 아니 얘네 그 추좀 반제 제방부 얘네 그 추좀 어때 지소 주근 안에 추좀 대체 스비치네 차바도야 침변 줍라에 침발라 어다 저거 주소 침보스 못해 짐바다 추름다 쇠비 최대 켜봐도 침발라 줍라에 아니 침변 양수 안제 샤바이라 세데라 데니 진다 추름다 쇠비 최니 켜봐도 침발라 샤바이 야
Then the next verse is a summation of this whole chapter, and it goes in verse 99. A dharma, in essence, compassion, consisting of generosity, morality, and tolerance, was especially taught for householders. You should resolutely internalize it. And the first part of this is that is explained in the commentary, such that when one is on the occasion that one is living as a ruler or within the kingdom, this is of course addressed to Master Nagarjuna's friend, King Dechuzangpo, and so. He's saying here that on this occasion, when you're residing within the kingdom, then generosity within the 6 perfections. First among them is generosity. Then comes the forms of ethical conduct or ethical discipline, which include such ethical disciplines as taking up the precepts of a lay follower, an upasaka. Here, there are 5 precepts that the layman or laywoman should take up, including abandonment of taking life,
소저바 마진발래 모임 주창 그녀가 반장하지.
So they should avoid killing. They should avoid taking life. They should avoid taking that which is not given or stealing. They should avoid lying, saying that which is not true. And then they should avoid engaging in improper forms of sexual activity. And then also should avoid, give up drinking alcohol. So those 5 vows that are observed by the lay follower, upasaka. And then also there's the 1-day vow of taking up the 8 precepts, which are the previous 5 plus 3 additional precepts. And then, so that kind of ethical conduct. And then there's the dharma of forbearance or patience. So these have been taught, in particularly for householders. That is, those people who are living as householders are relatively easy for them to practice, and therefore they were taught, explained for householders.
Oh yeah. 세비체니 개발도 쉐와데 개발도 쉐와 아니 침바랍도 좀라 라바다 마이스 침베 아니 죽이 나네 대숨 지수 죽이 나네 아니 침바다 추름다 쉐바 숨보데 줍라와 인장 아티송아레 줍라와 인노 파진 담보 숨보대양 인지 인보젠 땜바 콩반 저세가나 다 로바 티세나 이제 님보체 돈이도 비셔럽지 아니 심비관에 그러와 아니 코스민부터 비셔럽지 심비관에 태양 아니 저완인지 심비관에 아니 저완인지 첨부 당 아니 코스민부터 비셔럽지 아니 심비관에 아니 콤바 땜바 콤바 저체와
So then this, where it says especially taught for householders, that doesn't mean that these were taught in some way that is superior to the way in which these are taught for renunciates, those who have gone forth from the household into renunciation. That's not what is indicated here. Rather, it's taught that way. They're especially taught for householders because they're among the 6 perfections. These 3 are easier for householders to accomplish or to practice than the other 3. And then these first 3 perfections listed in the verse here of generosity, ethical conduct, and forbearance, these are said to have as their essence compassion. Where it says they have as their essence of compassion, this means that one is performing them as a Mahayana practice in which one does them out of in a way in which they're governed by compassion. And then likewise, one can make them a Mahayana practice by having them governed or, in a sense, controlled by wisdom, in which one understands the essencelessness or emptiness of the three portions of the activities here. For in the case of generosity, the agent who's giving the gift itself, and the recipient of the gift are all empty of intrinsic nature. And so if you do the action in that way, then the action is governed by wisdom in that way. And then therefore, one should, it's at the end here it says, you should condition yourself to this, habituate yourself to this in a firm fashion, in a steadfast sort of fashion.
다 대제라 야보기 자세 정도에 대한 바 최단된 몇 군지 개발하잖아. 로면이나 다랍도 중앙 담바텔라. önde 직된 미신치 최시 자세 직가나 원은 önde 아니 직된 방지 아니 섬전 대다 아니 차와만 임바라 주바당 미신바 아니 침가게 차와라 주발라 써와게 다 드니 이제라 미신바게 미신비실 아니 대다라 소제라 소와 소제발라 소와 주보 마셔발 아니 취지 자세 직가나 소독 배냐 마당 바기 아니 최단 팀비 자세지专业的 아니 갈라카보 연하선 직가나 균전 대나 취지 최당 아니 년바다 차비 텐도 아니 취지랍도 중앙 토바 잡아 그래서 세대나 최단 차된도 취지랍 중 탑재리
So then, finally, is an instruction that, or advice to the king here, that if he's not able to perform the particular behaviors that are necessary for a king, these special kinds of activities, conduct that pertain to kingship, if he's not able to do them in an appropriate fashion, that he should become a renunciate. And here this verse says, last verse 100 says, and I changed it a little bit, however, if it is difficult to rule in accord with Dharma because the world is opposed to Dharma, then for the sake of Dharma and glory, it is proper for you to attain renunciation. The word, it says here monk, but that's not necessarily the case. Here it says renunciation, meaning going forth from the home and becoming a renunciate. So here then the commentary says, however, if because the world is unruly, this means if world referring here to the sentient beings, beings within one's, the sentient beings in the world are unruly, that is, they behave in a fashion which is contrary to the Dharma by engaging in killing, lots of killing and other kinds of non-virtuous activities, then if it's difficult for you to maintain your rule over the kingdom in accordance with Dharma, meaning that if you cannot rule such unruly kinds of persons without having to contradict the Dharma by engaging in negative actions yourself, such as taking life, etc., like imposing capital punishment and so forth. If you can't do that, then for the sake of the Dharma, as well as for the sake of your own reputation, you should, it is proper for you to obtain the status of a renunciate.
Oh yeah, that did Rinpoche Chingwale, 최단 야위 최단 집에 자식 좀 수된 바 레우디 시와오 자고를 레우디 시위 저와오 차 다디 레우 시와데 저와차.
So then it then gives the title here. It says, from the precious Garland, an exposition of the way in which a king is to conduct themselves. Here, this is understood as how they're supposed to conduct themselves in a way which accords with that of a son or daughter of the victors, a son of the Jinas, who that is a bodhisattva, this 4th chapter.
누군가와대 자주스비 쪄봐 때 침바다라 좀 꾸지 안에 나왔다와 자주스비 쪄봐라 어디라 아니 타바 뉴도 타바 되베 안에 랍도 중화라 담바니 침바다라 좀 랍도 치베 자주스비 랑도지네 도르담바다 개와셔바 니세
So then the 5th chapter is an exposition of the instructions or the practices that are to be performed by bodhisattvas, whether they are householders or renunciates. All bodhisattvas, whether they're householders or renunciates, the kinds of trainings that they should undergo. And then it says here, in order to, if someone desires to quickly attain liberation, or the first topic here is that there's an advice that if one wishes to attain liberation quickly, it is best to become a renunciate. And that has two subdivisions. The first of these is showing that 김바당 라도 중에 창조 simply long-dorgi.
라도 중에 굳이 나왔단 봐. 대란이 전에 침바다라 중그 창조수에 랑도지네 돌단 봐.
So the first, this topic has 2 subdivisions. First is the brief exposition of the subjects which are to be things that are to be taken up, as well as things to be abandoned by bodhisattvas, whether they're householder bodhisattvas or renunciate bodhisattvas.
다 담보 돌단 봐 대라. 테네 랍도 중화에 담보 랍라 랍고 차. 소소타본 두제당 만데 전담담 압라 좀 세가라 안 야고기 자세 땅와 테네 안에 랍도 중니 랍도 중에 통마 담보 랍야 될 가르래 sana 사바 추lun지 나와라 안에 랍도 그와 차고래 라 테네 랍도 중화에 담보 랍라 랍고 차
So first it says, thereupon, as a renunciate, you should first become serious about your training, focusing on the pratimoksha, including the vinaya, and also on becoming learned and determining the meaning of what you study. I've changed the word monk there to renunciate.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Then having cast away one's kingdom, one's rule, and become a renunciate, at first, one should be extremely respectful with regard to your training in the the superior training in ethical conduct at the outset, at the beginning.
나소소 타바니 칸라 안에 가서를 라도 중에 사바 추준지 나와 칸라 땜바기 안에 누이 되네 송고인 말 소소 타바니 안에 누이 되네 라도와 도디당 아니 롱시당 남제당 천지당 시두와 시전에 다 롱대시 세조인 바래 롱tum부시 두와다 짜와탕 어디 되네 숨거나 누이 되네 아니 테마세 아니 되네 숨라세 가라 다 가상 쉬와 나신체 추름지 나와 안 땡지 쪼워친데 땜바 누이 되네 띵의지 나와 땡지 쪼워친데 땜바 도디 되네 시럽지 나와 땡지 쪼워친데 땜바 아는 원배 되네 제 안에 되네 숨라 안에 토마 만도 태워지고 고와래 시간에 되네 숨라 만도 태워탕 태워점지 마줘봐 안에 뒤에 땡라 봐봐 되네 숨지 땡대다 안에 가서 소소도비 시럽지 땡라 팝니 땡라 팝발라 점버를 채니 안에 삼중그 시럽그 땡라 팝 아니 땡라 팝니 냠소 안자게 내태다 아니抓把写吧学过去过来现在啦소소 타바 도제당 만데 텐담 압람 딤 라 Yeah.
So then this verse is explained, the remainder of this verse is explained that the pratimoksha, this is referring is the explanation of the ethical conduct, particularly as it pertains to ordained renunciates like monks and nuns and so forth, but it also includes the discipline for lay persons as well as an adjunct. But this the pratimoksha as a category is a category of subject matter as well as the texts that express that subject matter. And this includes an abbreviated form of the Vinaya. Vinaya is the actual sort of legal code for ordained monastic renunciates. So there's the abbreviated summation of the Vinaya is one of those categories. Then there's also what is called the four-part agama. Agama it means literally tradition, but here it's referring to another collection of texts which relate to the ethical conduct, as it's and especially the vows that are preserved and followed by ordained monastics. And there's four parts of that. And then there's, together with the Vinaya as such, Vinaya here is referring to the the actual list of the vows that is utilized by ordained monastics. So these, basically there are multiple textual versions or collections of texts which expound the different aspects in abbreviated or more extensive fashion, all of the various topics that are exposed or that are taught in the Vinaya. And so the person who becomes a renunciate should understand these in their entirety. And likewise, they should engage in an extensive study of the three collections or three baskets. The three baskets here refer to the three collections of, first is the Vinaya itself, the collection of the Vinaya. Then there's the collection of the sutras, the scriptural collection of the sutras. And then there's a scriptural collection of the metaphysics or Abhidharma. And so with regard to these three collections, the Vinaya itself, that is the scriptures or the statements of the Buddha that pertain to the Vinaya, the particular mode of disciplining oneself, are found in those kinds of sutras. And then the general sutras, which, I'm sorry, I have to back up. The collection of Vinaya is that which pertains to the higher training in ethical conduct. So the texts which explain the Vinaya are the basis or the textual basis for the higher training in ethical conduct. Then the general collection of sutras is the principal source for the higher training in meditative concentration, that of the three trainings. Then the Abhidharma, the collection of expositions or texts which explain Abhidharma or metaphysics, is the principal source for the the training in higher wisdom. So the three trainings then are correlated with the three collections of these scriptures. And so one should, then the end of this verse says, one should concentrate one's mind on establishing the meaning of this, that is the Vinaya as well as the other texts which explain the three higher trainings. And the concentrating your mind here refers to using investigative analysis. That is investigating the meaning of, first of all, you hear it, and you listen to it, you learn it, then you apply your thought to investigate, to ascertain what the actual meaning of it by means of wisdom, which investigates conceptually the meaning of what you've ascertained. And then through that kind of investigative wisdom, out of that wisdom, then you get the understanding or wisdom that arises from thinking about the teachings, and then that serves as the basis for putting them into meditative practice or habituating yourself so as to develop the wisdom that arises from cultivation or habituation or meditation. So all of these are things then that one should know completely in terms of the topics which are to be taken up.
Oh yeah, that then 가서 대내와 천직시 권도 샤바 나신시 되네서라 만도 퇴와다. 안에 퇴위 된데라 삼중 그 때라 아발라 점바를 쳐대. 안에 랑도 랑제네 조바 셰바시. 안에 조바 셰바 되네. 안에 녀와 천직시 녀와 천직되다 셰바 쳐와다. 안에 저위 신은 방와 쳐와. 그러니까 대내녀와 천직시네. 아니 저위 신은 방와 쳐. 그러니까 안에 방와의 저위 신은 안에 방와 쳐. 저위 신은 방와 쳐. 방와 쳐져 저야대 가르래세나 대례장 저위 신은 방와 쳐. 대례장 아주 자든 잡아는 배딩에 봐 또봐 쳐네. 방와 쳐. 그러니까 아주 자든 잡아는 배딩에 봐 또봐 쳐. 是到我呢下边给帮我瞧啊抬来，我呢下边帮家我就在对面下边抬的，俺那别说他接的，俺我倒把钱的，俺那帮过来，
Then the next verse says, then having understood the fine details of the faults and the basis of those, which are the bases for activities, that one should cast them away. This is a slightly different translation from what you've got. And so, therefore, one should do that. First, understand the fine details of the faults and which function as the bases for activities, and should cast them away. These 57 things, these are renowned as 57 things, and one should make effort to understand them with certainty, to ascertain them and understand them with certainty. So the commentary explains that having understood the subtle or fine details of the faults, one should abandon these things which are the foundations which are to be gotten rid of. And among those, there are 57 things to be abandoned, to be gotten rid of, which are renowned. One should make effort towards that and having gained an understanding of this with certainty, a definitive understanding of this, then one should cast them away.
Oh yeah, that didn't ma. Java Shaba Teresa, that Java Shaba de that day Shashaman to my mambo show to turn to Samaro. Java Shaba de Saja de Malana. Java Shaba de la Jumba, the Yandan Lawa Ni. Tambo Jumba Tela and Java Shaba to turn to a niche. Tambo Java Shaba Tela and Trosso Tambo and Jonga Shaba. Tsujene Shijiba Missivi Topi Pashaba. Senior Rango Yandan Roba so Shaba. Oh, that's it.
So then we won't go into this right now because it's quite detailed and complicated but today. But the simple outline that's going to follow here is what we've just covered then is the initial summary or sort of summation of what is to be explained. That is the topics that are to be taken up and abandoned for bodhisattvas, whether they're householders or renunciates. And then the extensive explanation of this follows here, showing how to get rid of faults and to take up good qualities. The getting rid of faults has two subdivisions, an extensive explanation and then a summation at the end. The extensive explanation has three subdivisions. That is an explanation of the first 15 of the things to be gotten rid of, starting off with wrath, etc. And then there's another 16, from number 16, which is hypocrisy, forward there's 41, which are explained as michiwe topa. This will come later. And then the 42nd of these is proclaiming one's own good qualities, etc. These are all explained as comes will follow, and this we'll get into tomorrow. We'll stop there for now.